This is
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod, a podcast from Redhawk Publications.
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening out there in podcast land. The wonderful thing about podcasts is you can listen to them when you want to. So if it's 3 in the morning, I hope you will listen to us. Richard Eller is here. Patty Thompson is here. I'm Robert Knipe, your somewhat host, and we're coming to you live from the Plush Welded Studios on Catawba Valley Community College's campus. This is actually our second podcast in new digs, and we don't have the.
Is it plush? Is it welded?
Well, it's welded as much as our students can weld it. And we are here today with poet Julia Nunnally Duncan. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Did you have a good drive in?
Wonderful.
Okay, great. Stop in any fast food places or anything like that for a cup of coffee or a...
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay, so if you hear someone's stomach growling over the microphones, it will probably be our guest.
And you know what? I might recommend, if you're looking for a place, you might want to go to Tasteful Beans, which is located in downtown Hickory. Poet Scott Owens owns and operates it.
Right.
Sells a lot of good poetry books there.
Has a lot of great Redhawk Publications books
He
there.
does.
I've read about it, and I've met Scott in the past.
Yeah. And, of course, being the host and, I guess, founder of Poetry Hickory, maybe you sign up and see if you can get yourself a date there. Do some readings.
And now that we've given Scott Owens the free advertising on this episode...
The plug that he deserves.
I just want a free latte, guys.
yeah.
It's very self-service.
Julia Nunnally Duncan is an award-winning author of 11 books of prose and poetry, including a new essay collection called All We Have Loved from Finishing Line Press. Her upbringing in a western North Carolina textile town plays predominantly in her work, which is filled with family, community, and history. You are an alumnus of Warren Wilson College.
Yay.
And you're a teacher.
I
have taught.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
English and Humanities at McDowell Technical Community College for over 30 years. So you're in good company here with the rest of us community college
Absolutely.
teachers and worker bees. You now devote your creative energies to writing and playing classical piano. Wow.
Yes, love it.
Wow, classical too.
Oh, yes.
Put that adjective in there.
Oh, absolutely. I played a little Bach right before I came.
Oh, did you really?
I did.
Oh, great. Wonderful. I'm a Debussy kind of guy.
Oh, wonderful impressionism.
And
Yes.
I love Chopin too.
Oh, I do too.
Yes.
Oh, I do too.
You live in Marion, North Carolina.
I do.
With a mountain woodcarver
Yes.
husband
Yes.
named Steve.
Exactly.
So, and you got a daughter, Annie.
Yes, I do.
Good. Any grandkids or anything like that?
No.
No? Okay. Well, welcome.
Thank
We're
you.
here today to talk about her book called When Time Was Suspended. It's a new book of poetry from Redhawk Publications. It is currently on sale for pre-sale on our website at redhawkpublications.com. You can save a few dollars if you pre-order it today. So go on there, take a look at our wares, and look on the new releases or the pre-order section, and you will find Miss Duncan's book. So we'll open up the floor here for any questions that anybody might have. Patty?
This is not your first book.
No.
I mean, it's interesting. The other day, we had Cecil Willis in, and he wrote, it was his first memoir. With Les Brown, it was his first collection of short stories. But for you, you've had an extensive publishing background. Could you tell us a little bit about your writing journey?
Absolutely. I started publishing books in 2002 with Iris Press in Tennessee. And sadly, Bob Cumming just passed away, I think, just recently. So he was my first publisher. Fred Chappell, who also sadly just passed away, had written me an endorsement with that first short story collection, and that sort of got me started. Well, Kay Byer also sort of introduced me to Fred. So all these people have passed since then, but they had a big part of my early publishing. And so I started out with Iris Press publishing a couple of short story collections, and then after that, Parkway Publishers published a novel, and then March Street Press. And so it just, different publishers through the years. And then in 2016, my first essay collection was published by Lexio Publishing, and in between poetry books. So Finishing Line did one in 2018, Neighborhood Changes, and then Finishing Line has just done All We Have Loved, which is another essay collection that came out in November 2023, and then Redhawk Publications with When Time Was Suspended Now. So that's...
welcome to the family.
Well, thank you. I'm very, very pleased to be here, believe me.
You came around circle, but you finally found us.
I did.
How did you find us, by the way? I'm just curious.
I'm not. Maybe I read about
came to
someone
her in a
else.
dream.
Maybe right. That wouldn't surprise me. Something kind of telepathic. But I think I was just like reading about one of your authors or something. I'm not really sure, but I don't really know.
We have gotten good acclaim from local and statewide poets, so it's not surprising that maybe we were subliminally on your radar. But we are very fortunate to.
We take joy in being part of the ether now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of neat.
It could be that your subconscious was telling you that there was a really weird publishing editor named Robert Knipe who really likes kind of dark country poetry and ekphrastic poetry.
Well, it's that
Because
for sure.
your book is really cool because it's kind of dark.
It is.
It's a darker side of Appalachian poetry, Appalachian nostalgia.
Right.
It's very, very popular to think about the good things that went on with Grandma and Grandpa and the farm and everything. But you touch on some things in this book that are sometimes just surprising.
I know, and I can thank my late mother, for that, because she told me stories my entire life about some things that had happened in Marion, in her childhood and so on. And so those kinds of stories stick with you. And then I discovered Stanley Burns' photos from the Burns archive and sort of fell in love with those medical and photographs. And I've always loved photographs, especially old photographs, and have found some darker moments in that. So,
have you ever ekphrastic? Is that
ekphrastic? Yeah, it's from the Greek, being able to describe something in immaculate detail, and it has over the years kind of turned into the description of art. And the more deeper you can describe it, the better the person can see it. That's one of the reasons why I was really excited that she didn't want to put the images in there.
Which is
she let the words do it.
And that's what I was going to say. It's like when you read these without the photos there, you start to visualize. And my image of the guy without the arm or the guy with the grand green leg, it's going to be different from everyone else's.
Right.
But as you read it, you're giving the reader the luxury, the privilege of interpreting what you say in your words. So, well done.
well, thank you, because you never know. I mean, you want it to be clear if you don't have the picture in front of you. And I studied those photographs to try to, write those as clearly as I could, convey that as clearly, because they are, in most cases, quite disturbing. But I wanted some redemption, in there. It's not just a description of dark things or tragedy or whatever, but some humanity in there as well, with the medical issues and the injuries, during the Civil War, because they were very poignant pictures to me too, as well as disturbing and fascinating as they can be.
And how many people did we lose in the Civil War? Is it 750,000?
At least 640, but some people say closer to 1 million.
Yeah. And so, in a way, reading your poems, excuse me, it's as if their life was not lost for nothing, because you've given them the respect.
Oh, thank you.
That person whose name we don't know, but at the same time, we honor that person.
Well,
for
thank
dying.
you. That is very
regardless
touching
of what
and
side, and them being
gratifying.
very nice.
And the key to the thing is these are people who survived.
They did.
These are people who are having their photographs made with their eyes out and their limbs missing. And I love the descriptions of some of the faces, the indignant look on the face of one of these gentlemen in one of these photographs. I think he was the one who was shot through the face, and the bullet grazed his eye, and I can see it, even though I've
Good.
never seen that photograph. And I want to talk to you about the metaphorical aspect. Are you commenting on war here, or what are you wanting us to think about when you describe these photographs to us in this detail?
I'm not necessarily making a commentary on war, but I am wanting the sacrifice expressed, because they were great sacrifices that these men had to, and boys had to live with the rest of their lives, and some did all right with that, and some didn't do so well with that. It's just like any war where there would be those kind of psychological and physical repercussions. But I've just had an interest in the Civil War, more so World War I now, actually, and I write about that a lot. But my own family ancestry is rich in both Civil War participants and World War I participants. So there were just losses and a great deal of suffering, and certainly I recognize that in the photographs and by what I've read. So I just wanted to maybe just give a little humanity to some of this,
Yeah, because you mentioned sacrifice several times in some of the poems,
Right.
and even in the World War I poems when you're talking about. There's a poem in there where a member of your family's, I don't know whether if they were married yet or they were betrothed, but he was killed in France.
Yes.
And it's a great poem because
I'm going to read that one.
Oh,
wow.
great!
That's
you,
one that
You
I'd like
you
to
talk about this woman living her life without him,
Yes.
and going 70 some odd years or something like that past that trauma, and that's some things that we don't think about, when it comes to the sacrifice of and it's not just war sacrifices. Sometimes disease does that. Sometimes accidents do that,
Right.
and it makes us think about how we need to carry people, or how we carry people who have left us long after they've left us.
I agree, and that particular poem, that was, I remember this lady, my great aunt. I remember seeing her when she was quite elderly, and she and her elderly sister out, here and there in town. And my mother told me the story, and I have the photographs, the family photographs. So, it was just a compelling story that I heard all my life about my great aunt Lola, and wanted to capture it some way.
And yet you also have poetry of hope, though.
Oh, absolutely.
I love the one
I
that you
hope
wrote
so.
about your little daughter
Right.
when she was a baby.
Yes.
And, your hopes for her growing up.
Right.
So, there's
And my hopes have been fulfilled. I mean, she's done quite well. And hey, Annie, if you're listening. But no, there is hope. I certainly didn't want the book to be just one of despair, but hope as well. Because, there's hope in, life too.
It's what I guess people live for is that hope. You also have some personal history in your collection, this collection too, right? Like Christmas
Family.
Day, 60.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Memories, my own, yes,
Yeah.
my own experiences. I explore my childhood in the 60s in my essays a lot and in my poems. So absolutely, they're there as well. Memories that I have of growing up in McDowell County and some of the things that I experienced in Christmas time and all of that.
And all of this could be classified as history, just presented in a rather unique way.
Yes, I think so.
And I do believe that that's a huge part of what we do here at Redhawk Publications is we bring to press and market some of this art that is historical. We spoke with Dr. Willis yesterday. His memoir is this terrific synthesis of memoir and history book. And, your poetry is the same way. It gives us history. It reminds us of things. And I made a note this morning that, while I was reading this, I feel like in my life I was somewhat at the age of 6 or 7 years old on the end of a particular kind of time that became encroached by modernity. I can remember my parents leaving me in Kaiser with my grandma, Minnie Knight, and she had outdoor plumbing. She used to walk to the store. She'd be so kind and nice while Mom and Dad were there, but the moment that their car crested the hill, she says, "You ain't gonna lay around here and read them comic books. You're going to come out here in the field with me and you're going to hoe some taters." And I just go like, "Oh no, I don't know how to hoe taters."
But I bet you
But
learned.
I learned right quick because I found out that if you wanted to eat them taters, you had to get out there and hoe them taters. But I do feel like that I was on the tail end of that. So I've got these
Yes.
rather vivid memories of the stuff like you write about.
Right.
But at the same time, it's almost like it's another world.
It was, really. That's the way it is with some of my memories too. The outside toilets and the things, the just really rural agricultural aspect of the neighborhood where I grew up. It's very different now. Neighborhoods have changed a great deal, and the one I grew up in has. And so it was still, it was late 50s, early 60s when I was very young, and the world is quite different than it was then.
Seems like it happened so quick, too, when you
I
think about
know.
it. I know Dr. Willis's book discusses two-seaters and, outhouses that had one seat versus two seats. And
Right.
as a small child in the 60s, my mom would bring us to Virginia to see her Aunt Minnie. And that smell of an outhouse, I could still tell you what it smells like.
I can too.
It's still somewhere in there.
It is.
My-
Never
forget
leave.
that.
My grandmother Minnie was 76 years old before she had indoor plumbing, and we literally built a bathroom on her part of her back porch,
Right.
to which she then complained incessantly that we took the area that she dried her apples. So you can no longer have any fried apple pies because you wanted to build an indoor water closet that I don't even need. So even on up there, she was feeling like she could make it up and down that hill to the two-holer down there in the glade.
Tried to give her the convenience that she didn't want.
She did not want it.
Yeah.
You sacrificed.
And what's amazing
Sacrificed fried pies.
is students now, that's as foreign to them as being a caveman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great to preserve it because it does deserve that respect
think it
and
does.
that acknowledgement that we didn't have all this stuff
Right.
at one time. No. And nobody suffered.
No.
Not really. I mean, it's like your aunt or grandmother
Grandma, yeah.
that didn't think she was suffering by walking up the hill to.
Oh, she suffered more giving up that spot that she dried those apples in on that back porch because she complained because it was the perfect sunlight area. The sun stayed on it all day long. So the apples would dry in half the time that my Aunt Veenie's or someone else's apples would dry. So she could make twice the fried apple pies that anybody else could because she could dry them faster. So we just tore her up when we took that area to build that. And her house up on not cinder blocks, but rocks gotten out of the local creek. So this old A-frame house is up off the ground. You could crawl right up under the house, and her steps were these giant rocks. And when you needed to go to the bathroom as a boy, you just went on the back porch and you just went.
It killed the weeds there. Yeah. I mean, there is science to all of that, the ventilation that comes through underneath. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, that's to keep it dry.
Yeah.
And she had giant wood stoves that she cooked on. The wood was in the middle, and she'd take the burner kind of thing off and put wood in there and put the burner thing back on and have all these pots going on this thing.
Oh, and talk about smell. I remember
Yeah.
my great-grandparents' house had that, and you could go in, and I knew it was their house. I could be blind and go in there, and just the smell of it, yeah.
And I have to say, as someone from the Northeast, when I hear you guys talk about your memories from being brought up down here, I'm a little envious because my memories are maybe going to Harlem or Bed-Stuy in New York. And believe me, it was colorful and it was wonderful, and there were odors there too. But I just think that this was a simpler time, and it sounds trite to say simpler, but it was without the modern convenience. And I don't know if the young people today will have these memories.
Well, their
are their memories
definition-
going to be of McDonald's?
Yeah, their
You know?
definition of lower tech is higher than ours because those grandparents did everything with an it's kind of like the grandmother with the drying area. They did things with an ingenuity that we don't even think about today. but it's important. It was important to that age, and you're right. It wasn't simpler. They had their own concerns and issues and that sort of thing, and it was just as complex to them as ours is to us now. But it was different and more self-reliant.
Absolutely.
Who did you say?
I'd say certainly self-reliant.
Yeah.
Do you still have family in the area? And are any of the old homesteads still there?
Well, both my grandmother's houses are still there. They don't look the same. They've not been kept in the way, and my childhood home is still there. My nephew lives there now, and so yes, there are some still, but they've changed. I mean, the grandparents' houses have been altered, and there aren't the beautiful flowers in the yards, and the little gardens in the back, and some of the mill houses in Clinchville where my mother grew up. We would, while she was still alive, we would drive through Clinchville and look at those houses, and she'd say, "That's where my Grandma Davis lived," or "That's where we lived," and everything. And they're still there, but I don't think they look exactly like they did in the 20s and 30s.
You've even got a poem in your collection here that kind of shows that movement from the older way of living to the newer. This poem called "Remnants," where and I'm thinking, are you the girl?
No, that would be my mother.
That'd
That was
be
her
your
grandmother who would come from the country to her son would bring her to the mill village to spend some time with my mother and her family. And my mother would walk to town to Marion to buy some remnants for her patchwork quilts. And this is a story my mother told me many times too.
And I just love how grandma's got a focused job to do to get these remnants.
Yes.
But the girl is looking at the cafes and the movie theaters.
Especially the movie theaters.
Yeah, and these things. And that really touched a nerve in my growing up when we used to come to downtown Hickory. And, because your eyes are looking at these new things and thinking about these replacements or these things you're not used to that you'd love to try, but grandma or mom or dad's like, not time for that.
That's right.
Not time for that. So that poem's called Remnants, and it's on page 16 in the book. If you get the book, you can take a look at that.
And where does one get the book?
One gets the book at RedhawkPublications.com, and it is currently on sale for $13. And you choose your shipping. If you get over $50 worth of books on our site, it's free shipping. So go to RedhawkPublications.com and take a look and order you a copy of When Time Was Suspended. I want to talk about this poem called Apron.
Yes. Another one of my mother's stories.
Yeah, this poem called Apron. You weren't planning to read this, were you?
I can read it if you'd like.
Can you please?
I certainly can.
Just read that right quick, and then I want to talk about
What page
that.
is it?
Oh, it's on page 23.
There you go.
Thankfully, we have page numbers in our book.
All right. This is Apron. She worked in Clinchville cotton mill, and that evening after quitting time, she filled her apron pockets with rocks big enough to hold her down when she walked into the waters of Lake James to drown.
That's heavy.
It was a heavy story the way my mother told it too. But
Is there any background on that as to why she did that?
it's a
or-
mystery. It's like an old Appalachian ballad. It just something happened and we don't really know exactly why, but we just know it happened. And it's interesting that she worked that day, had her little apron on, and she knew what she was going to do, I suppose,
And it kind of rhymes with, one of my favorite literary figures, Virginia Woolf, did the same thing in 1941. She filled the pockets of her apron with rocks and went into the River Ouse because she was afraid that the Nazis were coming, and she would rather die than live under the oppression of the Nazis. And you wonder in this poem that you've written here, what was on this woman's mind? What was scaring her? What was terrifying her that led her to do this kind of thing?
I have no idea, and I can't begin to understand what would motivate her, but it's just provocative. that.
Yes, it is, because
she
it's a
did
very
that.
resolute decision.
Yes, it is.
Very resolute. One has to hold oneself under the water. One has to want to do that.
Right.
To do that, I mean, that's a resolution.
Yes, it is.
And it's very provocative, very good poem too.
Thank you.
Because
Thank
there's not a word wasted in it.
Right.
So you must have worked on that one a while
I did.
to get it like that.
Right. I'm kind of a fan of terseness, you know. I guess I'm influenced by Chekhov a little bit and that kind of thing. But yes, I appreciate that. I'm glad it was moving to you.
Yeah, that was terrific.
I know there's another poem you had on your list to read, and if you wouldn't mind, would you read that to us as well?
Absolutely. Well, I was going to read When Time Was Suspended, which is on page 67, sorry. And that's where the title of the book comes from. So I'll read that one. When Time Was Suspended. Mysteries are there, faces from long ago that no one today can identify. And revelations, too, youthful versions of loved ones who lived in a past we never knew. Photographs capture times we might forget if not for an image to remind us of that day. Sad, enlightening, and dear, family pictures can be, allowing us to see what we and others were then at that moment when time was suspended.
That's good.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, photographs, I love photographs. I inherited most of the family photographs from both my maternal and paternal families. And so I've spent a lot of time studying photographs, and it is sad, and it's touching to me and a lot of times I don't know who these people are, and nobody labeled them, which is risky if you don't do that, because the time's going to come when people will look at those and say, who was that? And I have a beautiful portrait of a World War I soldier from my father's family, and I have no idea who he is. And I have some of great uncles. I do know who they are. But this particular portrait is so beautiful, and I just wish I knew who he was, what his name was. But it wasn't labeled. And he must have been somebody important in the family for that portrait to be placed in that album where it was. We'll never know. I'll never know.
When my grandmother, Bessie Scheidel, on my mother's side from Cleveland County down Shelby, passed away, my wife and I inherited about 3 fruit cake paint tins filled with loose photographs, decal edge photographs, black and whites. The only thing on them, a little 65 or 62, because they'd been taken and processed in either 1965 or 62. And as we identified people in those, one Christmas, we had some of those things framed up and gave them to people in the family for Christmas presents. Here, you're in here with your brother. Or here's a picture of you when you were in the cradle. And the family seemed to appreciate that. But we've still got dozens, and we've got people we don't know who they are.
Right.
These older women who look like they may have been in their 80s in 1959, and we have no idea who they are. And on that photograph is this ghost of a person, this suspension of time.
Exactly.
And they're forever waiting to be recognized again.
I know. But they're forever alive, and that's what's
Exactly.
lovely about it.
Yeah, they're only lost to us
That's right.
as far as our understanding goes. But it's a word, I forget which one of you mentioned it, but a word I thought was interesting in that you said terse.
Yes.
And what I remember about that generation is they were terse.
Yes, they were.
So you've captured that attitude that they brought, and I think that's out of hard work, and life wasn't easy, and so you had to get to the point.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
And it's talking about the woman who didn't. She left us with a mystery as to why she went underwater. I had an aunt that did the same thing. They said she drowned herself, and the only thing the family would say was, "It was over a boy." And what boy, what circumstance? I mean, it's left to us to imagine what those circumstances were that would cause somebody to take their life after a day's work like that.
Exactly.
And so it opens up all kinds of possibilities, really.
It does, really. Yes, you could write a novel about it if you really wanted to.
Yeah. And you've got novels in your list, right?
Yes, a couple of novels.
Is that how they came about? Is just conjecture?
Well, the first one, Drops of the Night, it's been a good while since I've written it, but I believe it came from a dream or something. The premise or something came from a dream. The character, I can't really remember a lot about where it came from, but I found novel writing to be emotionally draining, to be honest.
Yes.
Because you have to live with those characters for a prolonged period of time and everything. So I haven't written a novel in a good while, but I do enjoy writing essays and poems because you can kind of get to it a little bit more quickly,
So it's easier to jump in and jump out of those stories?
Oh, I think, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like writing about my life. I mean, I like writing nonfiction, and most of my poems now are that. They're based on, the poems in this book, I didn't make up, anything. And I wanted that to be kind of clear in the disclaimer because they're not, contrived from imagination. They're based on stories I've heard or things that have happened or things I've witnessed, And
I'm glad you caught that in the boilerplate.
Right.
Because we have our boilerplate copyright that basically says, there's no, any identification with anybody living or dead is coincidental, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then Julia went in and edited it in a wonderful way that can be used in the future when we have stuff like this. So I appreciate you finding that and instructing a better way to say it.
Well, it was important to me to make it clear that these people were real, and these circumstances. I mean, I try to be discreet, obviously, in what I write about people and situations and all that sort of thing, to just be respectful of people and with no ill intention whatsoever toward anybody. But, yes, I appreciate your working with me on that.
Oh, that's no problem. We're learning at the same time everybody else is.
Right.
There's a poem in here that I felt a lot of kinship with, a poem called Poison Oak. And I think that truly is a metaphorical poem. You're writing about poison oak as being something, and
I think so.
What's the other weed?
Kudzu.
Kudzu, yes.
Yeah, they are enemies for certain.
As being these things that can strangle.
They do.
And you mentioned in the poem about Robert Frost mentioning that nature's always killing itself.
Right. I went back and I studied really what he said about that. And one thing's trying to overshadow another thing because they're all fighting to survive and everything. But if you live around kudzu or I guess honeysuckle vines and certainly poison oak, you'll see that they really do have a life of their own, and it's kind of eerie at times when you think about it.
Yeah, and I love the way you put it. It's one of the poems in here that I can see there's just something different about it enough to where it kind of stands out. That and the poem about the Tuesday, where you realized you didn't live in Mayberry.
Oh, and that's exactly the way I felt. Everybody, I'm sure, felt sort of that way. But in Marion, and I had to teach that night, and my students they were certain Marion was going to be next, and it was a very memorable day for a lot of reasons.
Just so that our listeners understand, we are talking about 9/11.
Yes, we are. Yes.
So there is a poem that Julia mentions of her feelings on that particular day.
Right.
I also was teaching at a community college that day in Hawaii. Now you tell me the difference between your students were concerned that it was going to happen to Marion.
Right.
I'm in Honolulu trying to explain to my students why you should be concerned about this. I mean, we're an ocean away. They had no idea. There was no connection to the mainland per se, and certainly not New York. So to explain to them why I was upset and nervous, and they were like, "Well, why, miss?" And it's like, "Well, your livelihood, tourism, and guess what's going to happen in the next few days? No flights, no hospitality, no tourism, no hotels."
That's right.
And they got to see it. They didn't know it at the moment, but they understood for the next year or two that their breadbasket, which was tourism, came to a really abrupt end. So it is interesting to just think about what the students' perspectives were when monumental things happen. Sometimes they don't think all the way through.
And I was actually a student here at that time. I was training to become an educator. I was changing careers, and I went to a Spanish class. And we had a special speaker, a woman from Argentina, who the first words out of her mouth were that now Americans can feel what it feels like to live in other countries where you're constantly in danger of being attacked. And that didn't hit a lot of the students in the class very well. There was some anger there because she had said that. And I remember the poor professor had to calm them down a little bit after she said that. So
A lot of innocence was lost that day.
It really was.
well, it still resonates today. That attack still resonates to this very day in some of the divisiveness and some of the problems that we have politically in the United States. It's just still there. I mean, it was something that is probably going to resonate for years to come. It just is, and I think you've caught it.
Oh, thank you.
I think you've caught it in there because the innocence is gone.
And it's one of those big historical events that, kind of like COVID, is that people go through that you don't realize you're weathering at the time. But it's interesting to see, like a 9/11 from a Marion perspective, or a COVID from a Western North Carolina perspective of just.
And she's got a COVID poem in
do.
here,
For sure.
which is
Oh, really?
which
Okay.
really will tug your heartstrings.
Yeah, it
Because
still
it-
does mine.
Yeah, it has to do with was it a grandmother?
No, my mother.
Your mother. Okay, that toward the end of her life they had to speak on cell phones and
We couldn't be with her at the hospital. We
Yeah.
couldn't go in the nursing home. It was horrible. It was a nightmare.
seeing her through. In the poem, she talks about picture windows.
Yeah.
And basically, and so this book is so up to date yet nostalgic in its history and its past, that it just offers so much. I was surprised with every poem that I read that, I went back and forth in time and kind of realized that the humanity is the same regardless of whether you got indoor toilets or not.
That's true.
We're all got heartstrings.
Yes, we do.
And we've got this need for this connection. And that poem is a killer poem.
Wow, thank you.
Because there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who felt the same thing.
I absolutely agree. I'm sure it's horrible.
I notice you have quite a few signings coming up.
I do.
Would you
I do.
want to go ahead and discuss them? I know the first one, I think, is at the, Mountain Gateway Museum.
Yes, it's a wonderful historical museum in Old Fort, North Carolina, and I'm going to be, weather permitting, on the front porch there, and so I'm excited about that. It's a wonderful place to visit. If you come and to see me, go tour the museum as well. It's a lot of artifacts from the area, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful venue.
That's March 23rd from
Yes.
12 to 2 at the Mountain Gateway Museum in Old Fort.
Yes,
And then you've got another one on April 6th, Saturday,
right.
the McDowell Arts Council Association's gift shop.
Yes, MACA we call it, and it's the local arts hub, so to speak. And I'll be in the gift shop there. And again, come and see me, or just browse at some of the local arts and crafts there, because they have a lovely little gift shop, and it's conveniently located in downtown Marion.
Oh, nice. And then another Pioneers Day. I've heard of
Oh,
that.
that's a wonderful
That's
occasion.
a big event. I mean, a
It
lot of folks
is.
come out to that one.
It
That one's
is.
on April 27th, Saturday.
Yes, I'll be there all day. My husband, Steve, and I will be there together for that. And again, it's a wonderful experience for families. There's music, there's food, there's arts and crafts, there's blacksmithing. It's just a wonderful day to spend there in Old Fort. And
Julia, you're going to need more books.
I think you're right.
probably need more
I've been lining up. Yes, I was thinking about that this morning. I thought, you're right, because I keep adding.
I got to do an order today. I got to.
Well, I also know you have another event that we just kind of squared away with in the past week. Now, that's not until the summer, right? There's one that...
At Bramblewood.
Yeah.
Yes, at Bramblewood in Black Mountain.
Okay.
And then, so there's several there. And there's one I don't think I even put on the list, but it's not until December. But I'm I'm lining them up.
Good for you.
Yes.
Now, Patty, can readers go to our website and find these dates? Or will
know
they be
what?
able to?
They are.
They will be soon.
That's a good
Sorry,
question.
Patty.
Actually, they are in the press releases that are getting out.
Oh,
know
there you
what?
go.
But what we can do is we can also put it on your social media flyer so that folks know they're coming up.
Right, and that may need to be updated just a bit because I think there's one that's been added. And I'm putting them on the North Carolina Writers Network, calendar of literary events. I spent a couple of days working on that, so
So you can go there and check,
you can to the literary calendar.
and we'll try to
yes.
stick them on the podcast.
Yes.
The
As a
YouTube
matter of
version
fact,
of
they
the
will
podcast.
absolutely be in the description on YouTube as well as when it goes up on all the other platforms.
Wonderful.
Those dates will be in there.
And to our other writers, this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I enjoy doing. I really do. I enjoy doing book signings. When you meet people and they can tell you what they feel about your writing, and it's just great. And I have some repeat people who come to these, events. So I also send out a lot of just emails and letters and so on to say,
And I suppose there's ample opportunity for further stories. I mean, people tell you stories at these things. You share them.
constantly.
Because you're sharing with us, and
Constantly.
they share back.
And they tell some very interesting stories, too. They really do. My students did for years. I had students that I thought, you've got the best stories, mountain stories, if they could just write them, Mm-hmm. They had such wonderful stories to tell.
Because there's so many stories in the hills of western North Carolina.
Absolutely. And the dialect, I like to try to capture that, especially my essays, the dialect of the people and the customs and so on. And so you hear it.
Yeah, the very first poem in this collection talks about panthers.
Absolutely.
Instead of panthers,
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
pronouncing it panthers.
That was great grandma's way of talking, I'm sure. I sadly didn't get to know her. I think she died in 1955, but I know her through my mother's stories, so and the photographs too, which helps.
And there's so many things you can learn about a turn of phrase from an old person that tells you more than you could fathom.
Absolutely.
By just the way they say what they say.
Absolutely.
The linguistics of it.
I love it. I love studying the dialects. I love dialects in general.
We've been really blessed to get quite the collection of folks writing about mountain life, Appalachian life. Yourself, Dr. Cecil Willis, who came in, who did a memoir. He was brought up in Canton. And then we have Les Brown, who recently did short stories set in, I always say Lindenville Gorge, but it's really not. But
It's the mountain area.
It's the mountain area north of, it's in McDowell County, but it's in the northeast corner. And knowing this, it makes me think that we could put together a package or an event where we have maybe quite a few of our little mountain-oriented authors,
Right.
and do an event with maybe an evening or
be
something where
great.
we get a one night of. So we'll keep in mind with
Kind of a
this.
sharing thing.
Yeah.
So, how about ending the show by reading us that one poem that you had mentioned?
Yes, and this is the one about my great aunt Lola, and it's a World War I poem that had been mentioned before, and it's on page 69, and it's called "If He Had Come Home." She was to marry him, and while he was far away, she dreamed of the day they would wed, but it was not to be. Killed in France, he lost his life and their joy over there, and she cared nothing for marriage anymore. In a portrait of my great Aunt Lola, made a decade after the war, she's a stylish woman in a fur-trimmed coat and cloche hat, and her dark hair and large brown eyes reveal the beauty he must have seen. Yet the solemn expression on her face shows no trace of happiness. I wonder if, when she heard the news, she imagined him entangled in barbed wire in no man's land, or lying blood-drained in the mud. Of course, she couldn't have known the circumstances of that place, and her ignorance was a blessing. She outlived the tragedy 70 years, existing in a world without him. But I feel she still dreamed of how different her life could have been if he had come home from the war.
Ladies and gentlemen out there in podcast land, go to redhawkpublications.com right now and order you a copy of When Time Was Suspended, or go see Julia in person at
Yes.
one of her many, many upcoming appearances, because there's something about an author, a poet, reading his or her own work that adds to the depth and the artistic aspect of that work. So, Julia Nunnally, Duncan, thank you very much for coming to our plush welded studios here at Catawba Valley Community College. I want to thank Richard Eller for running the boards and making us all sound good. And I want to thank Patty Thompson for all the work she does.
And she's going to tell you how you need to like, share, follow, and subscribe.
Yep, all those things to make sure that the podcast continues to be popular. And we want to see hundreds and hundreds of people listening to our work. So I'm Robert Knipe, and thank you very much for joining us here on RedPubPod.
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 There you go.
Thank you very much. We'll talk to you all later. Bye.
This has been
RedPubPod.
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 RedPubPod, a podcast
RedPubPod.
from Redhawk Publications.